Hi, I'm Dr. Dan Ratner. Today I am joined by Irralee, a physiotherapist from Sydney, Australia, now living in the UK, in private practice in mind-body work. Irralee has a fascinating story of recovering from Raynauds and training at SIRPA with Georgie Oldfield, who many of my viewers know from our interview together. I'm excited to discuss her experience as it is such an addition to the mind-body world when we talk about recoveries from things other than the musculoskeletal things we see more frequently. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and I will get back to you personally. Irralee, it's such a pleasure to have you on. I've got a big contingent across the pond, and wonderful to connect with you. And what I wanted to do is start us off with talking about your own story of mind-body experience. You told me that you had Raynauds, and just tell me how it started.
My Raynauds started when I first got experience. Well, when I first experienced my Raynauds is different to probably when it started or when it was programmed into my system. So when I first noticed my Raynauds was when I went skiing as a 20-year-old. I got these cold hands and feet, which was unpleasant, but nothing too much to worry about. And at the time I was in Australia, and then I moved to the UK, and I love doing outdoor sports. I'm always mountain biking, hiking, skiing, whatever, in the cold in this country, and frequently experiencing very painful cold hands and feet, which tended to get worse over time. And it was just one of those things that didn't stop me doing my activities. I loved the activities, even though I didn't want the symptoms that, didn't do anything. I didn't do anything about them until 2 years ago. I was skiing with a friend of mine who has Raynauds, and he takes nifedipine, and that's a medication that increases the circulation to your hands and feet. And of course, then I was skiing with absolutely no pain. I thought, this is fantastic. Give me more of these drugs. And so, but of course, drugs do come with side effects, and really not a desirable way to deal with it. But then fast forward another year, which was a year ago, just winter last year, and I came across Georgie and training in the mind body and learning a lot more about the autonomic nervous system and mind body control. And it occurred to me that, well, Raynauds is a overreaction of the autonomic nervous system in response to a cold trigger. So maybe I could apply these mind body principles I've been learning about to myself, because I know, as you would agree, when you learn about this stuff, when you apply it to yourself and have the personal experience, it is so powerful in your belief and being able to use that. And fortunately, I'm not someone who's suffered with chronic pain. That's not what's brought me to the mind body. It's more through, as a physiotherapist, having patients suffer with chronic pain, that's brought me to this sort of arena and quest to understand. But personally, I wanted to be able to try it out on myself. And how this came about was last winter, my husband, because he likes to joke, he knows I hate the cold, so it's great entertainment to him. He put his cold hands on my rib cage because it gets a fantastic reaction, as you can imagine. So this was just after I just started training in SIRPA. And in that moment, I just screamed up, I hate the cold. And I went, oh, okay. And I just had that moment where a light bulb went up in my head. Because up until this point, I hadn't thought of applying it to the Raynauds on myself. And I thought, hang on, I hate the cold. Maybe this has got something to do why my nervous system is trying to protect me from going in the cold by making it really unpleasant. And so I just at that moment sat down on my bed and I asked myself the question. I said, why do I hate the cold? What's this all about? And weirdly, this memory popped up, which is something I hadn't thought about for a long time. And it was when I was about 8 years old. We went on holidays in Australia, and we went to the snowy mountains. And it was kind of after winter, so it's gone all icy. Well, I grew up in Brisbane, which is subtropical. I'd never seen ice before. This was the most exciting thing I'd ever seen in my life. And there was this big slope of ice, and my dad thought it would be really funny to push me down this slope of ice. So I got pushed down this slope of ice, and I can remember it being really cold, having a cold, numb bum and screaming all the way. But that's not what caused my Raynauds. However, what happened next, I think, is what's caused the priming event, the emotional priming event in my Raynauds. And that was I was wearing jeans, and I've got a younger brother, and we were sightseeing, and I didn't have a change of clothes. So I had to walk around this town with wet pants, and it looked like I'd peed myself. And to a young 8-year-old girl, this was like highly embarrassing and shameful and horrible. And it was a
Mm.
really uncomfortable experience. And I, in that moment, that memory just popped up when I asked the question. I thought, yeah, my nervous system doesn't want me to feel those really uncomfortable emotions.
Wow.
But then I didn't actually then get exposed to cold for another, 12 years.
Right.
So it wasn't until 12 years later when I went skiing for the first time I was exposed to cold conditions, that I had Raynauds.
Wow.
But
That's fascinating. I mean, you did such a great job laying out what the meaning of the symptom was. And in addition,
mm,
it was so important that you asked the question why. This is a big part of the work that I do is I say to people, don't just accept the way it is. Let's ask why. Let- Let's
yes.
let's get to it. That's amazing that you did that.
Yeah, and that's what I do with the work as well. I'm like, I want to know what the priming emotional event was that's trained this into your nervous system as a defensive response. Because Raynaud's, medically speaking, is considered incurable. It's an unexplained thing. It's called Raynauds disease, but it's not a disease. You can't
Mhm.
catch it. You're not
Right.
born with it.
Right.
It's not hereditary. So it just brought it into that category of, oh, yes, this is another mind-body condition. And I can do something about that.
That's great that you catch that too. And I often focus on little words that cement us into certain things. So if you call it Raynaud's disease,
Mm,
that's a much more like powerful sounding foe. And it
yeah,
also does denote that you're stuck with it.
yes, it seems permanent when you say a disease. It seems permanent. And it seems like something that can only be treated with drugs, because that's what we associate disease treatment with. Um, but I wasn't prepared to take nifedipine every time I went outside in the cold. That would be ridiculous. So then, um, what was interesting about this revelation when I had the cold shock from my husband's hands was that we were about, in a week's time, we were going to go to the Lake District and go walking with our friends. It was February, so it was cold. It was going to be cold. We're going to be exposed. I was going to get Raynauds. So I thought, I've got 1 week to sort this out and challenge it and see if I can make a difference. So I was totally motivated to work on it from there. That makes sense.
Well, it is incredible that it must have taken some real strength of mind to get there. I wondered, sounded like you came to realize this after meeting Georgie Oldfield. Is that right?
Well, I just started the training program. I was doing the training at the time simultaneously. See what I mean?
How did
And
you
that,
how'd you meet her?
well, I think I just randomly came across SIRPA on the internet one day. I've been on a quest to understand chronic pain for a lot of my career. And like, first of all, I was going down, I discovered the Curable app and then Lorimer Mosley's work. And I kind of was learning more and more through podcasts and books. And I thought, I don't know what to do with all this information. And then I saw Georgie's course and I thought, this is it. This is going to formalize what I'm trying to learn about and give it a name and give me a community and give me, some sort of title that makes sense of the information I was just learning independently.
Right.
And so I just happened to come across Georgie's work through that. And as soon as I saw the course, within 10 seconds, I had my credit card out and I was booked on it because I knew in that moment that was exactly what I was looking for. And I was so excited when I came across it.
I think it's great too because it's like you got some of your answers by knowing who you are and what you wanted, and you were a person on a
Mm-hmm.
quest,
Yes, yeah,
and you
that's
and
right.
and that's when you recognize the information when you know
Yes.
what you're looking for.
And I was so excited to see it was evidence-based and research-based, because I thought that was really important to me. And I just thought, wow, this is it. This is what I need to know. And so with that knowledge, I wanted to try it out on myself, and not having any chronic pain, I thought, oh, I'll try it out on the Raynauds. So
Yeah.
I applied exactly the techniques, if you like, or the process that I would apply to anything, substitute Raynauds for pain or anything else. So, and for me, I did it quickly, because the first stumbling block, the belief, the doubt column in your terms, there
Right.
was no doubt. So
Yep.
I was straight off on the journey, because I didn't have to spend all this time questioning it, because I knew. I suddenly said to myself, that this is an autonomic nervous system problem, and the mind-body system is about changing that programming. I was confident I could do that.
Yeah, and
Maybe
I go ahead. Maybe what?
I was going to say overconfident, because I hadn't tried it yet. But
Well, but see, here's the thing. When I tell people this all the time, when they're trying to conquer the doubt column aspects of it, the answer is usually the power column. And what I'm hearing you say is you had a good dose of power in you.
Yeah,
And you
I
were
felt
able to
like I
utilize
had the
that.
tools. Yeah, I felt like I've got the knowledge, I've got the belief, I've got the tools, got nothing to lose. Let's give it a go, sort of thing.
Right. So
So,
sometimes I have to work. I'm sorry to interrupt.
no.
Sometimes I have to work with getting people to a point where they feel powerful enough to tackle the doubt column. But you were there. It was
Yeah,
one of your
yeah,
abilities.
yeah. And I see it with our clients. It's hard for them to get to that power bit, because you have to have the confidence in the mind body diagnosis, and there's lots of doubts because of all the information that's come before, and we've been conditioned to believe. And as you do, you've got to bring up all those doubts and answer them all, so that then they can move forward with the techniques. Because if you don't have that foundation, anything you do after that doesn't quite land properly without the right foundation of the confidence and the belief in the system, I find.
What you're speaking to, as I hear it, is that if you don't understand something, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
You,
Confusion is stressful. Yeah.
it is, and confusion is one of the 4 main doubt areas that I do talk about. And kudos to you for making sure that you worked through confusion. And I don't know if you probably have found something similar to this. I keep getting more answers. I woke up this morning thinking about a little conundrum that I've been working on, and it popped into my head. I wasn't applying my own theory in the way that I usually do. And so we're continuing to work on it.
All the time. And I often find those early morning, those quasi state when you're coming out of sleep, that's when I get a lot of inspiration, and ideas just start to kind of percolate, and I jump out of bed with, a new revelation that's come to me overnight. So, and it's an ongoing process in this mind body, learning, it's endlessly interesting, and I'm learning every day.
There's a long tradition of that, because that's what Einstein used to do to get his ideas. So the theory of relativity came from that as well. So I want you to tell me about what actually happened with the symptoms when you started applying this thinking. What happened?
Okay, so of course it's an unusual situation. It's not like chronic pain, you've got it every day, and so you can see the symptoms change. I had a week to work on it, and then I was exposed to the cold trigger again to test it out. Okay, so what I thought was, okay, I've got the belief. I identified the priming event with that holiday. I then acknowledged the emotional element of the embarrassment and everything, and I kind of did a little bit of journaling about that. I wrote a letter to my brother to forgive him for teasing me mercilessly about that, and a letter to unsent letter to my dad, saying, I understand why you pushed me down. It didn't matter. We were having a bit of fun, and you didn't know I was going to have that reaction. So I sort of just had a chance to express something I would never express, because an 8-year-old, I didn't kind of ever follow that through, of course. Sure. So I feel like I resolved the emotional element, and I understood and joined the dots up for my nervous system. So my nervous system knew that I was no longer afraid of feeling those emotions. I didn't didn't mind. It didn't matter. I'm an adult. I can handle a bit of embarrassment. So, I wanted to reprogram that into my system. And then I realized I needed to change my reaction, my self-talk around cold. And I realized how often in my life I would say, I'd be moaning, being an Aussie in England, oh, it's cold and I hate the cold. And all my friends would know that I'd be the one like under the blankets and moaning about the cold all the time. And, I haven't been in water up past my knees in British Isles. Well, I have now, but up until that point. So I was known as the person who's nesh in Yorkshire terms, which means you're just overly sensitive to the cold and you don't like it. So that was me. But I was giving that information to my nervous system all the time. I kept saying it out loud in my head. So this just feeds that program all the time. My nervous system keeps hearing, we must protect her from the cold, that cold is not where she wants to be. So it gives you pain to remove you from that scenario. Not that I did remove myself from the scenario, but it still made it unpleasant for me. And then I did some visualization techniques. So this is all in this week before I went away. I just did things like, which I kind of just made up on the spot, but I visualized like lava flowing out from my heart to my hands, like trying to induce like a warm sensation, and then imagine being in a cold setting whilst feeling warmth in my hands and feet. Or when I had a hot coffee, I put my hands round because it was winter at the time, and I just imagined that sensation of warmth and linking that to then just sitting and imagining myself being out in the cold, hiking in the cold, to try and rewire warm hands with being exposed to a cold situation. So, and then the last thing I did was I thought I need to change my mindset so that on the way so a week later, we're going to the Lake District, we're in the car, we're on the way to do this walk. It was really cold, windy, miserable, drizzly day, but that's okay. And normally in that car journey, I would have been thinking, oh, no, it's cold. I wouldn't necessarily be thinking about my Raynauds, but I'd be thinking, oh, it's going to be cold. But I didn't. I was like, bring it on. I'm looking forward to this sensation. And I reframed the cold as something that makes me feel alive and invigorated. And it's a sensation. It's just a sensation. It's just a sensation of cold. It's neutral. I thought, not only is it neutral, let's make it, make me feel alive, make it a positive sensation. And I was just telling myself this information and feeling it, I was genuinely excited to go and test it out. So I was entering that trigger situation from a position of curiosity and enthusiasm rather than dread and fear. So, and, the same thing applies with people with pain triggers or any other trigger, but for me, it was the cold. And I did this walk, and it was quite a long walk, and I just wore normal gloves that you would wear, and hey presto, I got no Raynauds in my hands and feet. So I was super excited. And a month later, I went skiing in Austria, and it was minus 10 degrees. I left nifedipine at home and I went skiing, and there's a picture of me at the top of the mountain with my glove off in the minus 10, and my hands were absolutely fine. So then I knew I'd cracked it then. So wow. That was really exciting.
That's brilliant. And you obviously, you did such great work. I wanted to highlight a particular thing that I was thinking about, because I was thinking about people listening to your story and skeptics. And skeptics are going to hear that and be like, oh, I don't know. Or at least they might be skeptical, at least about themselves, not necessarily about your story. But when people are skeptical about things like imagining lava flowing out to your hands and that actually making a difference, I remind them that actually we have experiences like this all the time. You could be sitting there very calmly and then be reminded of something that made you angry. And suddenly you are back in that physiology. Yeah. So this is kind of reverse engineering it. It's like, no, we can actually imagine our way into a physiology.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And that's what you did.
Yeah, because obviously the body follows the mind. And if my mind has got these thoughts of warmth, then my body will experience that. That's the way it works. And that's the way you can influence the autonomic nervous system internally. So, and this is, if we get a chance to talk about Wim Hof, that's his whole thing about the fact that he proved that what was thought to be previously impossible, he could manipulate his autonomic nervous system.
Yeah, actually, that was my next question, is Wim Hof. Because a lot of people, they ask me, they know, they've heard of Wim Hof, and when they hear about my work, they're like, oh, have you heard about Wim Hof? So when did you come across him?
Well, I came across him because, well, on just as a little aside, the way I came across him, because my next challenge was to go into cold water, because actually when you go into cold, your body gets cold much faster than just in air. So I knew my next personal challenge was to go into cold water to see if I would get Raynauds then. I wanted to push it further. I wanted to see how far I could do this thing, you know. So, because I was just so amazed, I kept wanting to test it. I can't believe this has happened, you know, I had to keep testing it. So I went swimming in Scarborough in the sea, and I came out, and I just, not only was I not scared of the cold water, I was now actually enjoying it. And this was like such a 180-degree turn for me. So Georgie, obviously, I shared with her my Raynauds story, and I put a blog on the website about that. And then she came across this cold water immersion challenge, a 30-day challenge, and she shared it with me, and so that we could do it together. She thought I might be crazy enough to do that, and it just seemed like the next best thing for me to do. And so it wasn't a Wim Hof one, but it was kind of based on that. And we did a 30-day challenge that included breathing exercises and cold water exposure in a shower, which you built up the time that you spent in it. And so this was really interesting, because then it got that, and that's what got me interested in Wim Hof. So through that, because I knew that he was the cold water, you know, immersion person originally that this work had been based on. So I did a lot more looking into the Wim Hof method. There's a lot of information on YouTube and the internet, and Insight Time has got a course on it and things like that. So I sort of dove into what Wim Hof was up to. And I was interested to know how that aligned with the mind-body work that we do. And I found it, you know, it aligns a lot, because he's all about kind of how these self-limiting beliefs in what we can achieve, and how we can achieve so much more than we believe we can. And he's all about pushing that limit and getting back to nature and becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable. We've lost the ability to regulate our temperature internally, because if we feel hot, we put on the air conditioner. If we feel cold, we put up the heater, rather than actually using it. And obviously, evolutionary wise, we must be able to do that better ourselves internally. But we've lost the ability to do that or tap into that, because we rely on these external little gadgets we've got now to regulate our body temperature, for example. So we've just lost touch with our autonomic nervous system function. And Wim Hof's very much interested in that, and I was interested in that. So that's how I came to Wim Hof sort of information.
It's a great observation, and I just wanted to say it in a particular way, which is, I agree with you. I think we've lost touch with certain things, and we respond to problems with an external solution almost. But what we're talking about is, you can have an internal solution. I actually was going to ask you what you think is we'll finish up on this today, but I'd love to have you back to talk more about this. Let's talk about what you see being the key component to the people you work with getting better. Is it that internal shift of belief? How do you think about it?
Well, I think in our society, we have lost that power or belief that we have the power to change the state of our body from the inside to the inside. And that's because we have been conditioned or to believe otherwise, that we need to always look outside to some other external force to change what's happening inside us. But the biggest shift in this type of work compared to conventional medical treatment is that you are actively engaging your own resources with guidance on how to use your own power to change your own physiology. And you have to, in order to do that, it starts with the belief that that's even possible, because mostly until that point, nobody actually believes that's possible. and having to, and I'm finding, the way that really helps clients is when they read success stories or other people when it has been possible. They see examples of, I think that's very powerful when they hear other people's stories and that someone else has adopted this and discovered this self-empowerment and used it and recovered, because that type of evidence is not easily accessible to the public and they've not heard it before, and it really helps with belief.
Well, Irralee, I want to thank you for coming on here. I really would love to have more conversations with you about it. I think my audience is going to be fascinated by your recovery, not from chronic pain. I get a lot of questions about this. What if I don't have chronic pain? Well, the mind-body experience, it happens no matter what the physical symptom is. It can be a mind-body experience. Yeah. So thank you for coming on and sharing your story and your work. And it's really, really exciting to connect with you, and we'll connect again down the line.
Fabulous. Thank you. Great talking with you, Dan. All the best.
You too, Irralee.
Bye now.
I'm so glad that I got to talk with Irralee about these things. As I said, it's important that I highlight some things that are not just musculoskeletal. I get a lot of questions about this. They say, I'm looking all at back pain, or I'm looking all at chronic pain, and I see these things out there, and how am I supposed to get better? Well, this is an example of how to do it. And a couple of things I wanted to highlight about what she said that I thought were important. She got where she got by asking the question. I say this all the time, ask the question. Now, she also was able to get there faster because her power column was in pretty good shape right from the start. And that's wonderful for her. But it does show you how addressing your power column can address doubt much more easily. One other thing I wanted to talk about, the visualization she did. It's really important that we understand that how we visualize what's happening and how we expect what's happening is going to alter things. And so does our word structure. Notice she said, I wouldn't call it a disease because it gets stuck in your mind that way. And then you have more of a challenge to get past it. Now, in addition, she also did push to get for more relief. She pushed for greater experience. And not everybody is so good at doing that. But the fact that she did and the results she got can shed some light on how you can get better as well. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and I will get back to you personally.